World of Warcraft has been a massive part of my life for many years. Ever since my dad introduced it to me when I was a little kid, I've been hooked. Early days, I leveled countless characters, simply having fun exploring Azeroth, and I never even bothered with the endgame. Eventually, in WoD, I got into mythic raiding, and I started taking the game far more seriously, and I continued to take it seriously for quite a while, which eventually led to the creation of this YouTube channel, where I learned to make videos in order to talk about the game, and eventually even learned how to make full-blown machinimas. Throughout my time playing this game, I've created countless amazing memories and met even more amazing people. However, over the past few years, I've had a very on and off relationship with the game. I raided Mythic Battle of the Tsar lore, but I fell off the game and didn't even get AOTC for Eternal Palace or Nyalotha. In Shadowlands, I played the game for a month or two at launch, but ended up skipping out on the first 2 seasons of Mythic Plus, but came back and got the Keystone Master achievements for seasons 3 and 4. Every time there was a patch or expansion, I would come back and consider pushing keys, getting back into raiding, and committing to the game once again. But with the release of Dragonflight, I've finally come to the conclusion that I'm done. For good. Mind you, that's not because Dragonflight is bad. Quite the opposite, actually. Dragonflight is almost everything I could ask for in an expansion. I have some minor grievances, sure, but overall, it's fantastic. But that's precisely what made me realize WoW just isn't for me anymore. I'm going to explain in detail why that is the case, but I want to preemptively address some of the comments I already anticipate receiving. First off, I don't think me quitting the game is a terribly important ordeal, and if you don't care, that is completely fine. I simply want to make this video because WoW has been an important part of my life for many years, and it feels wrong to not make a video officially closing this chapter, especially since this channel only exists because of WoW. Also, I wanted to explain myself to the small audience I've amassed throughout my time talking about the game. Secondly, me quitting is not an indictment of anyone who still plays and enjoys the game. I don't think I'm better than anyone because I'm quitting, and I don't think I'm more enlightened than anyone because I'm moving on. Finally, yes, I will come back. I'm going to be checking out the new content when new patches and expansions release. I'm not quitting out of bitterness and resentment. I still love this game. I'm not swearing off ever playing it again. What I am swearing off is ever taking it seriously again. That includes joining a raid team, pushing for Keystone Master, and generally getting invested in the endgame. I will come back for a month at a time and see the new zones, the new dungeons, and experience the story, and I might even make a video or two talking about my thoughts on them. But I will not go beyond that. There's a reason this video is titled Moving On from WoW instead of Quitting WoW. World of Warcraft is one of the most novel gaming experiences anyone can have. Every patch of each expansion is its own moment in time, and that moment will be lost to time the second a new patch releases. There's almost a sacredness to this novelty in my eyes. I remember as a kid being mesmerized by stories of players venturing into Icecrown and killing the Lich King, or slaying Deathwing in the Dragon Soul. I could go back and farm these raids for transmog, but it couldn't be the same. That moment is gone. On one hand, it's sad that WoW disposes of its content so quickly, but on the other hand, it gives WoW such a rich sense of history, and when I got into the game, it made the world a million times more believable, and also made me appreciate the moment I was taking part in that much more. This novelty is a strength. It's one of the major reasons that my experiences with WoW mean as much to me as they do. Unfortunately, it's also a massive flaw, because it consequently means that the entire game is predicated on FOMO. FOMO, or the fear of missing out, is a core pillar of World of Warcraft. Each raid is invalidated by the next tier, each new dungeon is made obsolete by the next, even open world zones are entirely trivialized by new content. This aspect of the game that once made me love it is now one of the major reasons I'm moving on. When I was in high school, I was more than happy to throw each and every moment of my free time into WoW, but now I'd really rather not, and I hate knowing that every time I take a break from the game, I'm missing out on an experience that I will never get another chance to take part in. I will never be able to have the experience of doing Mythic Eternal Palace because I took the game more casually during 8.2, and if I follow through on this video and quit Dragonflight, I will likely never be able to do Shadowmoon Burial Grounds as a Mythic Plus dungeon again. And that's without even talking about the rewards like the Hellstorm Armordon or the awesome Gladiator PvP armor that I'll be missing out on. FOMO isn't unique to WoW, but it is far more foundational to its construction. Most other games use rewards to induce FOMO while continually building on the available content, but that's not what WoW does. This is one of the core hooks of WoW, and while I think it is effective and it has its benefits, it also demands constant investment and commitment to fully experience the game. And it's not something the dev team is backing down from. They're actually doubling down on using FOMO to keep players invested. The reps of Dragonflight are mainly centered around bi-weekly and weekly activities and have significantly expanded reward tracks. On one hand, it's nice that the demand to do world content daily has been lifted, but on the other hand, it demands a longer commitment to the game if you actually want to get exalted with each rep. They have made some adjustments to the rep gains since launch, but it still feels more like a ploy to extend subscription time than a genuine attempt to evolve reputations. The trading post, which was recently announced, also seems to be nothing more than yet another system designed to trap players into paying for their sub, regardless of how much they are playing the game, so they can continue to work towards unlocking flashy new cosmetics. In the past, I probably would have loved this system, as I was always subscribed anyway, so it would have just simply been extra rewards. But now, it's just another system that contributes to the game's FOMO. I'm a bit of a completionist when it comes to games. I tend to 100% any game that I'm particularly fond of, from Dishonored to Crash 4. World of Warcraft has been really important to me for a really long time, and a significant driving factor for my desire to play the game came from the aspiration to experience everything it had to offer. Early on, this was great, as it provided me ample motivation to play the game and an endless checklist of things to do. As time has gone on, that motivation has transformed into obligation. I feel the need to experience everything, and therefore I should get exalted with these new reps. I should do the new dungeons on plus 15, and I should do the new raid on heroic at least. The way I engage with WoW is a big part of the problem, but every time I have tried to take a step back and partake in the endgame in a more casual manner, that FOMO eats away at me until I either go all in or just stop completely. Almost every aspect of World of Warcraft is designed to elicit FOMO, and frankly, I'm susceptible to it. Largely because I do really like this game. If I want to continue to play the game and feel like I'm getting the full experience, I need to commit to at least getting Keystone Master every season, getting AOTC in each new raid, and getting exalted with each new rep. So why don't I just commit to doing that? Going for Keystone Master or AOTC in any given season of WoW really isn't a huge commitment. If you just play seriously for 2 weeks or so, you can get there. Hell, I've done it faster in the past. Well, that brings me to the second reason I'm moving on from WoW. The weight of commitment. I no longer like feeling tied down to a game. If I play a game, I want to do so because I want to play it and not because I have an obligation to do so. And for me, at the very least, WoW has continually felt more and more like an obligation. I like raiding in WoW. You know what? No, scratch that. I love raiding in WoW. The camaraderie that raiding with a group of like-minded players creates is truly something special. But I think we've all had that raid night where we didn't feel like raiding. To be blunt, it's an awful experience. It feels horrible to sit there for hours throwing away your free time playing a game you don't even want to play, getting more annoyed with each wipe caused by someone doing something stupid when you just want to kill the boss and go do something else. When the obligation of raiding is paired with the desire to raid, then it's a non-issue, but the moment your obligation and your desires are misaligned, it is torturous. Especially since you signed yourself up for this whole ordeal in order to have fun. I personally don't like ending up in that situation. Unfortunately, each time I have committed to a raid guild since Legion, I have found myself in that exact situation. Largely because, for me, the novelty of raiding has significantly diminished, but we'll talk about that more later. As much as I would idealistically like to play semi-casually and still see most of the content, that requires a fairly high level of commitment. Not compared to Mythic raiding, but a huge amount of commitment for an average person who plays games. Any time after Legion when I've committed to the game in any sense, my obligations and desires always end up being in conflict at some point. It might work out great for a little bit, but eventually my desire to play the game wanes, and yet I am still committed to it. The reality is that I just don't like being tied down to a game and feeling like I have to play it for any reason. The same issue applies to Mythic Plus. I love Mythic Plus, it can be really fun. But to take an example from Dragonflight, when I needed to start farming the Azure Vault and the Ruby Life Pools to get a weapon in order to keep pushing to higher levels, I completely stopped having fun because all I care about is seeing the content. But because gear matters, I have to be committed enough in order to gear my character up to get into plus 15s, wasting hours farming a weapon just to be allowed to push further. In isolation, needing to gear up really isn't an issue, but how that and other commitments intersect with the game's FOMO design and my desire to see the content is an issue. At this point, I've done almost everything in WoW. I've done pet battles, raiding, mount collecting, and so much more. I have been heavily involved in nearly every aspect of the game at some point or another. While I have enjoyed almost everything the game has to offer, the main thing that kept me invested were the dungeons and the raids. It's no secret that WoW has phenomenal group content, and regardless of what else is going on in the game, you can always count on the PvE content to be fun. While invested in PvE content, I had a fantastic time with other parts of the game. Yes, even things as mundane as doing world quests or farming old raids. The issue is, my enjoyment of these activities is reliant on my investment in PvE activities. This is something I realized really early on when I started trying to play the game casually. If I'm not invested in doing PvE content at a decently high level, I stop really caring about collecting transmogs and mounts for my characters because, well, what am I doing? I'm doing mundane content to collect rewards that I only use in mundane content. It's all really, well, mundane. And the experience of doing this content isn't enough to keep me invested. And when that investment collapses, well, there really isn't a reason to continue playing the game. I don't want to take the game seriously anymore because of the increasingly prevalent FOMO design and the commitment that comes along with that, but at the same time, I can't play the game casually because without the higher end PvE content there is nothing to keep me invested in the game. Maybe I could tolerate the FOMO and the commitment if I found WoW to be worth it, but at the end of the day, I just don't anymore, and that's for one pretty big reason. I've kind of already experienced World of Warcraft. Each expansion brings something new and different to the game, and there's no denying how much the game has evolved since its initial release. But at the end of the day, the content I'm doing in Dragonflight is extremely similar to the content I've been doing for years. The open world content is just as mindless, and it's just a collection of kill quests and fetch quests with combat that isn't remotely engaging. The dungeons and raids are mostly remixes of mechanics we have seen many times before. The most recent mechanic that I remember feeling genuinely new was the darkness phase in the Kill Jaden fight, and that was way back in Legion. All this content is good, don't get me wrong, but it doesn't feel new to me anymore. It feels like a variation on a game I have played a million times over because, well, that's exactly what it is. The content is very well made and very fun, but to me it isn't exciting anymore, and subsequently, it isn't worth tolerating the FOMO and the commitment required to fully experience it. WoW is still an exceptional game, but the issue is it's built on novelty and investment. In recent years, the novelty of the game has faded for me, and therefore so too is my investment. I don't want to commit to taking the game seriously, but I also can't stay invested if I play it casually. For the past few years, I have struggled with this dilemma, bouncing between one extreme and the other. What changed with Dragonflight is that I can no longer blame the game. In BFA, I could blame Azerite. In Shadowlands, I could blame the aesthetic and the restrictive design. But with this expansion, well, it's a little harder to blame dragon riding. For all intents and purposes, Dragonflight is exactly what I want out of an expansion. And yet, I feel the same way I did in BFA and Shadowlands. At this point, I've come to terms with the fact that WoW just isn't for me anymore. And the exact things that once made me love it are now the things that are driving me away from it. And it's for that reason that I'm moving on from WoW. With regards to my future with WoW, as I've said previously, I still plan on playing it, but I'm no longer going to engage with the endgame. I will come back for new expansions and maybe patches. I might make videos about it, I might not. It really depends on if I have anything to say. As far as my future with MMOs, I'm actually going to be playing a different MMO as my main MMO, so to speak, and that game is SWTOR. I've played the game on and off ever since its launch, and it sidesteps a lot of the issues I have with WoW. It doesn't rely on FOMO and requires virtually no commitment for me to enjoy it. I can drop off the game for 5 months and come back and not feel like I missed too much. Also, I just really love that game, always have. As far as what I'm doing with the channel, that's still slightly up in the air. Machinimas are definitely going to be infrequent at best. I might still make one once in a while, but if I do, I doubt they would be Evo-centric machinimas. They're more likely to be akin to one-off short films with new characters. As far as regular videos go, I didn't really like doing the unscripted style video that I did for the Dragonflight review and the Showdown on Runic discussion. It just felt really lazy and cheap, even though I put effort into the editing, so I'll probably just return to doing scripted videos. What those will be about will vary. I'll probably end up making videos on SWTOR as well as some on WoW at some point. Besides that, it'll mainly just be media, games or otherwise, that I'm interested in, and we'll see where that leads. I've been debating making a Crash 4 video for a while now, so that might happen. If any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to subscribe. If you liked this video, give it a like, and I would be very curious to know how you all have changed the way you engaged with WoW over time, and if any of you can relate to anything I've been talking about for the last, however long this video ends up being. Anyway, thank you very much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next video. Alright, bye.